Namaste, and welcome all of you, friends, disciples, and devotees, for my reading for October 16th, 2020. Today, the Mother's Force, Part 2, and this is primarily from Sri Aurobindo. There are certain possibilities in the way of the experience. First, there is the faith, or sometimes a mental realization, and this of itself is enough to make one open to the Mother's force, so that it is always available at need or call. Even if one does not feel the force coming, yet the results are there and visible. The next is when one feels oneself like an instrument and is aware of the energy using it. A third is the contact with the power above and its descent, in parentheses, spontaneous or at call, end parentheses, into the body. This is the more concrete way of having it, for one physically feels the force working in one. Finally, there is a state of awareness of close contact with the Mother, inward, which brings a similar result. When the peace is established, this higher or divine force from above can descend and work in us. It descends usually first into the head and liberates the inner mind centers, then into the heart center, and liberates fully the psychic and emotional being, then into the navel and other vital centers, and liberates the inner vital, then into the Muladhara and below, and liberates the inner physical being. It works at the same time for perfection as well as liberation. It takes up the whole nature, part by part, and deals with it, rejecting what has to be rejected, sublimating what has to be sublimated, creating what has to be created. It integrates, harmonizes, establishes a new rhythm in the nature. It can bring down to a higher and yet higher force and range of the higher nature until, if that be the aim of the sadhana, it becomes possible to bring down the supramental force and existence. All this is prepared, assisted, fathered by the work of the psychic being in the heart center. The more it is open, in front, active, the quicker, safer, easier the working of the force can be. The more love and bhakti and surrender grow in the heart, the more rapid and perfect becomes the evolution of the sadhana. For the descent and transformation imply at the same time an increasing contact and union with the divine. That is the fundamental rationale of the sadhana. It will be evident that the two most important things here are the opening of the heart center and the opening of the mind centers to all that is behind and above them. For the heart opens to the psychic being, and the mind centers open to the higher consciousness, and the nexus between the psychic being and the higher consciousness is the principal means of the siddhi. The first opening is effected by a concentration in the heart. A call to the divine to manifest within us and through the psychic to take up and lead the whole nature. Aspiration, prayer, bhakti, love, surrender are the main supports of this part of the sadhana, accompanied by a rejection of all that stands in the way of what we aspire for. The second opening is effected by a concentration of the consciousness in the head, afterwards above it, and an aspiration and call and a sustained will for the descent of the divine peace, power, light, knowledge, ananda, into the being, the peace first, or the peace and force together. Some indeed receive light first, or ananda first, or some sudden pouring down of knowledge. With some, there is first an opening which reveals to them a vast, infinite silence, force, light, or bliss above them. And afterwards, either they ascend to that, or these things begin to descend into the lower nature. With others, there is either the descent first into the head, then down to the heart level, then to the navel and below, and through the whole body, or else an inexplicable opening without any sense of descent, of peace, light, wideness, or power, or else a horizontal opening into the cosmic consciousness, or in a suddenly widened mind, an outburst of knowledge. Whatever comes has to be welcomed, for there is no absolute rule for all. But if the peace has not come first, care must be taken not to swell oneself in exaltation or lose the balance. The capital movement, however, is when the divine force or Shakti, the power of the mother, comes down and takes hold. For then the organization of the consciousness begins and the larger foundation of the yoga. Put your faith in the divine Shakti. Set your mind at rest and let the mother's force work. As for the mother's force, when one receives it, the best is to be quiet till it is assimilated. Afterwards, it is all right, not lost by outward movements or mixing. When you cannot meditate, remain quiet and call in the mother's peace or force. Namaste.